Hi, everyone. Today I'm here with McKeown. She played basketball at Northwestern, and now she is a women's basketball analyst. So we're super excited to have her on here today. Hi, Megan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I just wanted to start off by asking you if you could share a little bit about your college athletic experience, sort of how that influenced your career path that you're on right now.
Yeah, so good question. I played basketball at Northwestern, and I was fortunate enough to grow up around basketball my whole entire life. My dad's a women's college basketball coach. So when I was born, he was at George Washington University for 19 years. So I grew up going to every single game, going on trips. I would go recruiting with him. So just kind of growing up in a gym and growing up around college, women's college basketball was my childhood, which was the best way in the world to grow up. And then when I was 16, going into my junior year of high school, my dad ended up taking the Northwestern job out in Chicago in the Big Ten. So my whole entire family, not a good time to move when you're going to be a junior in high school, but we moved halfway across the country from the DC area and yeah, started my junior year of high school out there. And I never wanted to play for my dad necessarily. I was getting recruited by some other schools to go play, but due to some family matters, I have a brother with autism who is a couple years younger than me, and I have a sister that's 10 and a half years younger than me. I felt like it was best to stay close to home and was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to play at Northwestern. So I accepted to go there and really wanted to major in journalism, wanted to get into television, wanted to be like a sideline reporter and a host. So like had no intentions of going down the basketball analyst route, but had a great experience at Northwestern. You know, my college career I think was pretty normal for most people. I didn't play much my freshman year. And my sophomore year, I started playing a little bit more. Unfortunately, my junior year, I ended up getting injured and I tore my labrum in my hip. So I got surgery and sat out for that year. And then it was a long recovery for me. It was a 9 month recovery. So by the time I was cleared to play, it was September of my senior year. And my college career never panned out the way that I had hoped it would. But you know what? I learned so much just throughout my 4 years in terms of being on a team and learning college basketball and learning the game through a different perspective, which has really helped me in my career now. And not just from a playing perspective, but also being around my dad so much, the coaching perspective as well. So, out of college, my first job was in the middle of nowhere in Terre Haute, Indiana, at a local TV station. I was a weekend sports anchor and reporter, and was there for a year and a half before going to Indianapolis, where I was a sports anchor reporter working in local news, which was a great experience. And then decided I didn't want to do local news anymore, and kind of had some opportunities to call some games due to my background. And I fell in love with calling games. So worked at that for a while. And, you know, during COVID, the Chicago Sky picked me up to call some of their games in the Wubble, and things kind of took off from there. Big Ten Network shortly followed, and what started out as calling 3 games for them in a season that we weren't sure we were going to have basketball because it was COVID. I ended up calling 25 games for them. So, and ever since then, it's kind of been where my career has been guided, has been down this path of being a women's basketball analyst. And I'm so fortunate and blessed to work for every network. I now, you know, work for the Connecticut Sun, calling games for them. Once a week, I'm down in Atlanta for our weekly WNBA show on Ion. So there's a lot of great opportunities that have come, but it all started because, you know, I grew up around basketball, and it's been fortunate to be a passion of mine.
Yeah, that's awesome that like you had the background of like, growing up your whole life around it with your dad. And then also, you had the not, I mean, you could take good things and bad things from being injured, but you had to take a step away from basketball and, sort of find things that, you were passionate about during that time because, you don't have the sport that you've played your whole life. Can you talk a little bit more about, that year and sort of what you did to sort of
Being
help yourself?
injured like sucks. There's no other way to put it, you know? When you are, first off, being on a basketball team or any team in general is the greatest feeling in the world, and something like I appreciate so much more after being in the real world, because you get to the real world and there just isn't that same sense of camaraderie that you have in a locker room. Like in a locker room, you can still like, you could not like each other, but you like, you're going to have your teammates back. And that just like doesn't exist in the real world, which is really unfortunate. But it's a really important life skill to like learn how to be a loyal friend or like a loyal coworker, whatever that might look like. And when you're, playing, you're in the trenches and practice every single day together. Like there's just that shared experience you naturally have with your teammates. When you're injured, like you're not in the trenches every day with each other. Like I couldn't travel when I got surgery right over Christmas break. Like I couldn't travel, but they went on a big trip to New York. Like I didn't get to go on that because I wasn't cleared to fly on an airplane. So, things that you kind of miss out on, you start to feel like a little isolated from your team and like you're just not in that routine anymore. And I think when you're young, basketball becomes so much of your, especially when you're a college athlete, your sport becomes so much of your identity of who you are as a person. And when you're injured like that, identity gets rocked and you're not mature enough yet to like have the life experiences to make you realize that like you're more than your sport. So it's definitely challenging. And I feel for any player that's had to go through injuries because it's really lonely. And when you go through like a major surgery, it's hard on your body. Rehab absolutely stinks. There's nothing in the world worse than having to go to rehab every single day. But it was a really good life lesson for me. You have to learn how to fight back from adversity because life's not always, sunshine and rainbows. Like it isn't. You have to learn how to rebound from really hard things that you're dealt.
Yeah, like, that's definitely a huge aspect of, not even just having an injury, but, everyone in their college sport has moments of adversity, moments, years, seasons, days, whatever it is. That's definitely something that, helps carry over into your professional career, whatever it may be. Can you talk a little bit more about, I know you're still, obviously your whole career is revolved around women's basketball right now, but can you talk a little bit about, finding your identity and finding your footing, like outside of just being a college basketball player once your career ended?
Yeah, it's hard. It's definitely difficult. I was really fortunate in terms of like a mindset. I knew that I was never going to be a professional basketball player. So like I was really passionate about what I wanted to do after school. And so to me, it was a pretty seamless transition. Like I was really excited to go into the real world. And that I know that's not always the case for people. Like I have a lot of friends that played college basketball that like had a really hard time transitioning out of it because for your whole entire life, you have been so structured and regimented with your schedule with sports. Like, and you're told, like, from elementary school to this time, like you go to school, then like everything's mapped out for you. You go to high school, then you go to college, and like you have basketball practice. This, like, there's that structure. And that doesn't exist anymore once you graduate. So life after basketball can be really difficult. I was fortunate that that wasn't really an issue for me, but I was also like a weirdo who knew what I wanted to do when I was 16 and like it was pretty seamless. But I think the most important thing people have to realize and embrace is the change. And it's okay to be uncomfortable. Like that feeling of being uncomfortable is temporary. Like you will get into a rhythm and you will get into a routine. You just have to like give yourself a lot of grace, which in the age of social media, like for your generation, that's really hard because everybody makes their life look so great and easy on social media. When we all know that's not reality, like this stuff's hard. It's hard waking up every morning sometimes and like trying just to get through your day. But I think as long as you know this is like a temporary feeling of discomfort and it will get easier, it's huge. And you have those life skills that you've learned from being a college basketball player or high school even that like you know how to be a good teammate. You know what it's like to have to like get through like a really hard practice or you know what it's like to win and lose. Like those life lessons are really important and carry over and help you in adulthood.
Yeah. For someone who played in the Big Ten is like it's like a high major conference. I feel like it is super rare that you had such a clear vision for what you wanted to do post grad because even like you can see like at mid, low major Division 1 or even D2 and D3 levels, like people don't even think about what they want to do until their season ends, which is like at that point it's a little late if you want to be lined up for a job post grad.
And that's the hard thing too, is that, like as a basketball player, like you can't normally you don't have a job lined. Like a lot of your friends have jobs lined up their fall of their senior year. And it's like, that's awesome, but I don't have time to go to job fairs. Like I have practice. So I
Yeah.
think it's like, internships, that's the biggest misconception. Like I had a couple internships, but like, I just don't think it depends on what you want to do. As long as you are like networking with the right people, like I think internships don't matter as much as people put weight on if you're an athlete.
Yeah. How did you I know you just said you had some internships, like, how were you able to find those and sort of balance that within your career at Northwestern?
Yeah, I was fortunate to where like, Northwestern, we're in Evanston, which is right outside of Chicago. So I had access to one of the biggest cities in America in terms of the job market. So I was able to intern at Big Ten Network one summer and it was like a couple of times a week and they were very understanding of my schedule. I would take the train down and it was like really fun to learn and be around everybody there, which is cool, full circle moment that I now, work for them, which is awesome. And then one of my, within the Northwestern has one of the best journalism schools in the country. So one of the things, we also have the quarter system at Northwestern. So for a quarter, you have to like essentially study abroad. You go on like a journalism residency. And so I was able to schedule my residency during like spring. So as soon as the season ended, and my coaches were very understanding of that. And I still like worked out and I still, did everything that they sent me while I was on that internship as well. So you can, it's, if you want something bad enough, you can make it happen. You just have to find a way to make it work for your schedule and find balance. And I think it's really important to like always be upfront about what you can and can't handle. Like being realistic with an employer, like, hey, this is my schedule. And like, I don't have the flexibility that a normal person would have, but like people want to work with athletes because like of their natural, like their background and like their competitive nature. And like, they're normally pretty responsible.
Yeah, for sure. I was able to have an internship last summer when I was up at in Buffalo for my summer session, and that was, like, completely unheard of, even at, like, the mid-major level, like, even though, like, half of like, most of us are not gonna keep playing, like, after our college career, like, I guess in Europe, some people will, but, it's very unrealistic, and even at that level, having an internship over the summer was completely unheard of, but like you said, like, if that's something that you want, um, you have to, sort of go out and network and get it for yourself, which is, definitely something that's not spoken about, I feel like, enough at all levels of, college sports because realistically, like, not everyone is going to keep playing after
Right.
their career's over. So I feel
No.
like that's definitely something that's super important.
Yeah. No, it very much is. And you just have to think when people start to realize that like things aren't just going to be handed to you. Like playing time's not handed to you. You have to earn it. It's the same thing in the real world. Like a job's not going to be handed to you. You have to earn jobs. You have to like put in the footwork and the legwork to follow up with people and like create relationships and learning like how to network. And like you don't go into a networking call asking for a job, you go in asking for advice because if you ask for advice, a lot of times you can get a job. If you ask for a job, you're going to get advice.
Yeah, for sure. How did you first go about, like, your networking calls when you started to do your outreach? Because I know that can be something that's a little intimidating for people to
Yeah, it is
begin doing.
intimidating. I always just tried to ask for advice. Like, what was your path like? What was the hardest thing you've dealt with? Like, if you were in my position, what would you do? Like, those are the types of questions you want to ask. I talk to a lot of college students and I always get frustrated when they ask me, like, well, like, basically, I want your job. What do I like? How do I get that job? And it's like, well, you work for 10 years and you like go slum it in, small town markets and you work your ass off. That's how you get up here. But a lot of people don't want to do that. Like, it's again, I think it's the age of social media where like you don't realize like the hardships and the struggles that people go through. Like, no one sees that because it's not fun to see on social media. You just see like the cool interviews or whatever. And it's like, well, I can do that if you did that. It's like, well, you have to, sacrifice quite a bit. So I think it's important when networking, like understanding, like not asking for a job. You can ask for like advice on how to approach getting a job, but like I don't hire anybody. So like I always laugh when people are like, well, can you talk to this person? Like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't have time to do that. So like, you can ask me advice for how to handle something like that, but don't ask me to get you a job, please. I have zero power over hiring anyone.
How I know you talked a little bit about, like, the team aspect of playing a college sport and how, like, in the professional world, that doesn't really exist anymore, but were you able to find any, like, mentors and people you can lean on, in your career right now? that you found?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. Lisa Byington, who is now the play-by-play voice of the Milwaukee Bucks, and she's everywhere. Calls March Madness for the men play-by-play. Lisa was a mentor of mine in college and continues to be a mentor and like a good friend now, which is really cool. For me, it's funny, 10 years, I graduated college in 2014, and 10 years ago, there just weren't as many women in my field as there are now. And so like the women like Lisa Byington who have kind of paved the way for people like me to have a much easier time getting into the industry has been huge. So there haven't necessarily like been a ton of you know, people that I was able to network with, but I just so thankful for Lisa Byington and like how she was so patient with me and always gave me wonderful advice on how to handle the industry. And I certainly wouldn't be as acclimated or be where I am now without her help.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely super helpful to have someone, not only it obviously is helpful to have someone in your industry, but also just people like outside of your industry in your own personal life that
Yeah.
continue to remind you like why you deserve to be in the field that you're in or like what you can do and who like know you, and your work ethic and your personality. I feel like that's super helpful as well.
Yeah. Having a good support system, no matter what you're doing in life, is always important.
How did you go about like any challenges that you might have faced, immediately post grad and in your first job at this local news station? Like what were some challenges that you encountered that first?
Oh, well, I didn't get a job till August, and that was a little nerve-wracking not having a job. But again, like I think you have to like really just like keep the faith and like if you believe in yourself, like things do eventually work out. I don't know what else. That was a long time ago. I haven't really thought about this. But like I think there's just like the challenge of like having to learn how to balance. Like all of a sudden you have to learn how to cook for yourself and like go to the grocery store and budget things. Like those are all challenging, but I think with any challenge, as long as you are like cutting yourself a little bit of slack and like knowing that, this too shall pass, like you just have to find a way to get into a routine. Like finding, I mean, it's hard to like find times and like ways to work out when you've the whole entire life have been told what to do and what time you're working out. And like now you're like, oh, like should I take up yoga? Like, I don't know. Is that what people do that are adults? You just gotta figure out what like works best for you and just kind of like, I don't know, you have to have a sense of humor and be able to make fun of yourself because I did a lot of dumb things when I graduated from college in my first couple of years in the real world. And I was the cockiest I'd ever been. Like I thought I knew everything. And let me tell you, I didn't know anything. I'm 32 now, I don't know anything. So I definitely didn't know anything then. So you just have to like laugh at yourself and like be okay where your 2 feet are and just like you got to give yourself a lot of grace, which is hard for people, but you have to.
How did you feel? I know you said you were really unique in the aspect that you knew like what you wanted to do, but how did you feel um I guess compared to your peers and like about like the resources that you got from like your coaches and from Northwestern as a whole in terms of like being prepared to enter the real
Yeah,
world?
I mean, that was huge. And at Northwestern, like they have a whole entire, like within the athletic department, like a career services that was really helpful in terms of like they put together a resume for me. Like I sat there, but they formatted it out, typed everything out. That was huge for me. Like understanding and being able to access certain like people like Christine Brennan and Michael Wilbon, who like if you have paid attention on the internet, like Christine Brennan's been is one of the top Olympic reporters and just national reporters, and she works for USA Today, and she's everywhere. You see her on CNN all the time. Mike Wilbon with PTI, Pardon the Interruption, like he's everywhere on television, one of the biggest NBA analysts on ESPN. Like those are the types of people and alums that you have access to that I've been able to build great friendships and mentorships with, who have really helped me navigate a lot in this industry as well. So like just being able to take advantage of the resources, but it's on you to follow up with people. Like Mike Wilbon and Christine Brennan and like Lisa Byington, they're busy people. Like if I ever reach out, it's like, hi, and I don't always reach out with a favor. I just want to just reach out and say hello. Like you build relationships with people. You don't always need something from them. So I think that's important just to check in with people, and care about who they are as people. That's an important thing where at the end of the day, like the business I'm in is a people business. So like you have to consider that when going into anything.
Yeah, and I feel like even at smaller schools who might not have like that specific career athlete like center for athletes, it is super important to it's on you to, tap into that network of maybe alumni of your sport who played at your school or just like athlete alumni from your school early on and sort of build relationships with these people in fields that you might be interested in because no one's gonna, hand that to you like you said. Like that's sort of on you to sort of start networking and building those relationships early on.
100%.
Can you talk a little bit about what just my last question for you is just any advice that you would give to any athletes who are in my position right now, sort of going into their final year, or any athletes who might have just graduated and sort of feel lost and are in this sort of period of transition right now?
Yeah, it's really hard because, like we've talked about, like your sport has been your identity your whole life. And now all of a sudden you're expected to just like be an adult. And it's like, wait, what? I would just say, again, giving yourself a lot of grace with things not being easy. Like, it's okay to not know. It's okay to not know what you want to do. I started out thinking I was going to be a host and sideline reporter, and I hate sideline reporting. And now I'm a basketball analyst and I work for every network there is. So, like, that's pretty cool that you can pivot and things are not always going to be. And that's kind of like the beauty of your journey in life, right? Like, you think your one thing's going to happen and then boom, something else does. So I would just say give yourself some time, be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, and also like do everything that you can control. You cannot control if someone's going to hire you. You can control networking, reaching out to people. You can control thanking people. Always, anytime you network, follow up with a thank you note or a thank you email or a thank you text. Just like people taking time out of their days, people are busy. Like you got to thank them for their time. That's a very big gift that someone can give you is time. And trying just to take as much advantage of your resources as you can. Like if you have a coach that's really well connected with the media and you want to get into media and you have a game on television, like have your coach introduce you to the analyst or play-by-play on the game. Like the things like that, just make sure you share with your coaches or people at your school like what you want to do, and they're going to know who they can connect you with. Like your academic advisors, tell them you want to get into business. They're going to have access to an alumni database with somebody in your field you want to potentially get into. And also, if you get an internship and you hate what you're doing, that's why you do internships, so you can learn what you want or don't want to do. But like, you don't have to ever have everything figured out. Like, goodness gracious, I don't have everything figured out by any means, but here we are. Fake it till you make it.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for coming on here. I
You're
really appreciate
welcome.
it.
Absolutely.